guys, I'm going to tell you the story today of Wiley and the Hair Man. And it was originally told down in Alabama, down in the swamps. And there was a little boy named Wiley who lived with his mother. And one day Wiley was fixing up his hen roost and he said, I need some new poles to fix this up. So he told his mom, I'm going to go down to the swamp. And she said, you better watch out. The Hair Man will get you if you don't watch out. And so he said, oh, okay, Mama. She said, now you know the Hair Man's scared of hound dogs, so you need to take your hound dogs with you. And Wiley said, okay, I got my axe, I got my hound dogs, Mama. I'm going down the river. So he started getting on down there, and he felt pretty good until all of a sudden his hound dogs saw a wild pig, and they went off into the swamp. And so he said, oh, he's getting kind of worried because he knows the Hair Man's scared of the hound dogs. But he thought, you know, maybe they'll come right back. So he said, I'm going to get busy chopping. So he starts chopping down these posts for his hen roost, and all of a sudden he hears a noise behind him. Click, clop. And he turns around, and there stands the Hair Man. He is ugly. He's got hair all over his body. He's got big old black eyes like coals and big white ugly fangs. And he had feet like a cow. Do you think a cow can climb a tree? No. So he said, I'm going to run up that tree. So Wiley dropped his axe and right up that tree he went. Because he knew that was a safe place because the Hair Man couldn't get him up there. And he's up there in the tree just shaking. And Hair Man gets down there at the bottom of that tree and he says, hello, Wiley! And Wiley said, hello, Hair Man. What you got there in your sack? He said, nothing yet. Come on down, Wiley. And Wiley's thinking, I'm not coming out of this tree. Would you get out of that tree? No way. No. So the Hair Man said, all right. So he picked up Wiley's axe and he starts chopping down that tree. Chop, chop. Well, Wiley starts saying, fly, chips, fly back to your place. And he has a little bit of magic in his family, so the chips would start flying back and build up the tree. The Hair Man, he started chopping even faster. And Wiley couldn't talk as fast as the Hair Man could chop. And that tree started getting chopped down. And all of a sudden, he heard the hounds, hoo, hoo, out in the distance. And he started saying, here, dogs, here. They'd come back from chasing that pig. So as soon as the dogs heard him, they come lickety-split back to the tree where Wiley and the Hair Man were, and the Hair Man dropped that axe and he took off because they can't stand hound dogs. And so Wiley jumped down that tree, grabbed his dogs and his axe, headed on home. He said, whew, we got away this time. And he got home and his mom said, well, Wiley, how was your trip? He said, oh, Mama. She said, do you see that Hair Man? He said, yes. So he told her everything that happened with the Hair Man and how ugly he was. And she said, listen here, Wiley. Next time you go, you don't act scared of that old Hair Man. You just sit there and instead of climbing that tree, you say, hello, Hair Man. And he's going to say, hello, Wiley. And you say, I bet you don't know how to conjure, do you? And Wiley said, Mama, what's conjure? And she said, it's magic. And so Wiley said, okay. And he said, so what Hair Man going to do? She said, well, when you test him about being a conjurer, he's going to say, well, I can do that. And he's going to turn himself into a giraffe. And Wiley said, really? She said, just ask him. And so she said, then just say, well, I bet you can't turn yourself into an alligator. And Hair Man's going to say, well, I can do that too. And he's going to come out of that giraffe and become an alligator. And Wiley said, oh, I don't think I want an alligator coming after me. And so she said, well, then you say, well, turn it into something big. It's easy, Hair Man. How about turn it into something little, like a little possum? And Wiley said, oh, that's better, Mama. She said, well, when he does, you snatch him up, throw him in his bag, you tie that bag tight and throw it into the river, into the swamp. And then you will never see that Hair Man again. Wiley said, okay, I can do that. Well, if he takes his hound dogs, the Hair Man may not show up. So what's he going to do? He's going to tie those hound dogs up at home. So he takes the rope and he ties his two dogs up and he goes by himself into the swamp. Now that's pretty scary, but he's decided he's going to do what his mama said. So he gets there, and sure enough, who comes strutting out of the forest? Oh, Hair Man. And he's excited because who did Wiley leave at home? The hound dogs. He's thinking, hey, I got Wiley now. And so he says, and so Wiley saw him. He said, hello, Hair Man. And Hair Man said, hello, Wiley. And so Wiley said, I bet you're not much of a conjurer, are you? Hair Man said, that's what I do best. Yes, I am a conjurer. And Wiley said, I bet you can't turn yourself into a big old long-necked giraffe. And Hair Man said, huh. And he wiggled and twisted, and next thing you know, he's this big old long-necked giraffe, and it's right in Wiley's face. And Wiley said, that's pretty good, old Hair Man. He said, bet you can't do an alligator. And Hair Man twisted and turned as a giraffe, and next thing you know, poof, here comes the alligator snapping at Wiley. And Wiley said, oh, that's pretty good, Hair Man. but I bet, you know, that's big. I bet you can't do anything small, like a little old possum. And Hairy Man, as soon as he did that, Wiley wanted that alligator gone. So he twisted and turned again, and he became a little mousy-looking possum. Ooh, ugly little possum. And Wiley said, good. He reached down, snatched that possum up, shoved him in that sack, tied it up tight, and threw it into the swamp. He threw it in that swamp. And so Wiley was like, oh, he felt so proud. And he's walking back to his house. And next thing he knows, he looks around, and there stands the Hairy Man again. And Wiley said, oh, hello, Hairy Man. He's thinking, okay, my mama didn't tell me what to do now. So he just took off up that tree. He said, how'd you get out of that sack, Hairy Man? He said, I turned myself into the wind and I blew myself out. And Wiley said, Mama didn't tell me about that. So again, the safest thing for him is to climb that tree, because what Hairy Man can't climb. So he said, I'm waiting on you, Wiley. I'll wait all night if I got to, till you're hungry to come down. And Wiley's like, oh, Lord. And so he's going to wait. He's waiting in that tree, and he's thinking, and he's thinking. And finally, on his own, he said, Hairy Man, can you make things disappear? I bet you can't do that. Oh, I'm good at that too, Wiley. He said, boom. And he said, look at that bird nest beside you. And Wiley looks over, and there was a bird nest in the tree. Poof, it was gone. And Wiley said, I didn't really see it before you made it disappear. Can you make something else disappear? Poof. Wiley looks down, his shirt's gone. He said, how about that, Wiley? He said, you ain't got a shirt now. And so he realized he could make things disappear. And so he starts thinking. He looks down, and around his pants, instead of a belt, he wore a piece of rope for his belt. You know, we usually just put a belt on, but he had a piece of rope. And he started thinking. He said, Hairy Man, I bet you can't make rope disappear, this rope around my pants. He said, I'll make all the rope in the county disappear, Wiley. Who you think I am? And Wiley said, go ahead. And he said, and he puffed out his chest real big, and Hairy Man, he said, all the rope in the county disappear! And so all of a sudden, Wiley looks down, and his pants started falling. He's like, oh, so he grabbed his pants up while he's holding on to the tree. But who else was tied up with some rope? Back at the house, the hound dogs were tied up with rope, and Wiley knew that, and he knew that rope had disappeared. Hound dogs! Hound dogs! And all of a sudden, those dogs whoop, 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 through the swamp. And what do they chase out of the swamp? The Hairy Man. Oh, out of that swamp goes that Hairy Man. And Wiley's like, whoo! Now, he thought of that on his own, but he got back to the house. He said, Mama, you did not tell me that he was going to turn into the wind. She said, well, I didn't know, you know. But he was smart to think on his own. But at least he got out of that situation. And Mama said, but Wiley, let me tell you, we have fooled him twice. If you can fool the Hairy Man 3 times, then we will never have anything to do with him again. And Wiley said, well, how are we going to do that, Mama? And so she said, let me think. Now, Mama loved to do her thinking in a rocking chair. Bless you. And so she sat down in her rocking chair, and she had like her little knitting or maybe her quilt she was working on. She's a rocking. Bless you. And so she's a thinking, and she'd sometimes get the little. And this is where she did her best thinking. She said, Wiley, you go and put one of the dogs out front. So he went and took one of the dogs and tied it out front. And he just couldn't sit still. He said, Mama, you can think all you want. He was nervous. And then she said, go put one out back. So he goes out back to the house and ties up the other dog just to be safe. And she said, you going up to the loft? And he said, I'm just too nervous to sit still. So he ended up getting a broom and an axe too and put like a cross on their window. Remember, she said magic and conjuring up. So they believed in putting some crosses in some of the places. And so he put a cross on the window so maybe that'd keep the Hairy Man away. She said, first before she went upstairs, she said, I need you to go get the youngest little pig out of our pig pen. And he's thinking, what? But, you know, he didn't want to question Mama. We don't question Mama. And so he went out to the pig pen and brought in the youngest little pig that they had. And she said, put him in your bed, and then you head on up to the loft. And Wiley didn't know what Mama was talking about. He just went ahead and said, yes, ma'am, I'll do it. So he brought it in, tucked it in his bed. The little piglet was already sleeping. So he just kind of pulled up the sheets and left it sitting there sleeping in Wiley's bed. So he went up to the top to the loft, and he starts looking out front because he was nervous. And Mama's just down there in her rocking chair, humming her little hymns, just doing her quilting. And Wiley's pacing back and forth, and he looks out front, and he sees this big old animal coming up out of the swamp. And he thought, oh, maybe it's the Hairy Man. Next thing he knows, his dog broke loose out of that rope and took off into the swamp. Well, either it was the Hairy Man or something, but the dogs were gone. That dog was. Then he got nervous and looked out the back of the loft into the woods and saw another big thing coming up out of the swamp. And the other dog took off after it. And Wiley thought, well, maybe that's the Hairy Man. But the next thing he knows, he hears up on the roof of their house. It's like a little cabin. And he thought, oh, no, that was not the Hairy Man. This is the Hairy Man. And he got up near the chimney because the hairy man wanted to come down the chimney. But he touched it, and Mama was smart. She had a little fire going. And so when he touched that chimney, it was hot. And he said, "Oh, don't," he started cursing and just, "Oh, dadgummit." And he couldn't come down the chimney, so he just hopped down off that house and banged on that front door. Boom, boom, boom. "Mama, I'm here for you, youngin." And she said, "Oh, I'm not going to let you have my youngin, hairy man." He said, "Oh, yes, you are. I'll put lightning on your house and burn it to the ground." And she said, "Well, I got sweet milk to put out your fire." And she just sat there all calm and cool, and Wiley is losing his mind upstairs. And he said, "Mama, I'll drive your cows. You don't have any more milk. I'll drive your springs, and I'll send boll weevils everywhere to take all of your cotton." She said, "Oh, hairy man," still just through the door, "you wouldn't do that. That's just so mean." "Well, that's me. I'm the meanest person in this county." She said, "Well, all right, come on in. I'll let you have my youngin." And Wiley, or hairy man was just like, "Awesome." So he opened the door, and in walks the hairy man. He's ugly. Mom was trying not to look at him because he's just not pretty to look at. And she said, "He's right over there in the bed." So hairy man goes over there and pulls back the covers. He's already picked up the piglet when he realizes. He said, "Mama, this ain't Wiley, this ain't your youngin." She said, "Well, you didn't say which youngin I had to give you. You got one of my youngins. Now you can leave." Well, boy, Wiley, or hairy man, he was furious. He was mad, stomping his feet. He was gnashing his teeth. Later, he was so mad. But he knew that she'd done tricked him a third time. And if you trick the hairy man 3 times, you won't see him again. So he had to take that piglet, and he ran out into the swamp. He was so mad. And his mama said, "Wiley, you can come on down now." So Wiley came out of the loft, and he said, "Mama, thank goodness." And she said, "We fooled him 3 times, and we will never see him again." So remember that next time if you got the hairy man in your swamp anywhere near you. Fool him 3 times, and you'll never have to see him again. Thank you. A wonderful audience. You think the hairy man's ever come to see us? No, no hairy man here. Hopefully we won't. Thank y'all.